Mira sat at the small metal desk, filling out the last of her patient reports. The clinic was quiet now. The soft hum of the oxygen machines was the only sound that filled the room. Outside the glass door, the wind of Mars whistled through the empty street of Red Light 7, a small mining colony far from the center zones. She rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the clock. It was already past midnight. Her shift was over. But she didn't feel like going back to her small apartment. It was just a single room with broken heating and a window that wouldn't close properly. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft noise, a low knock, then silence. She turned toward the door. There it was again, a knock. Gentle and slow. Mira stood up and walked to the door. Outside, standing in the shadows of the clinic's doorway, was a man. His clothes were worn and dirty. His coat was torn at the sleeve, and his boots looked like they had walked across half of Mars. He had no bag, no ID chip in his hand, and no colony pass. Mira opened the door slightly. Cold air rushed in. "Are you hurt?" she asked. The man didn't speak. He only nodded, slowly, and then took one weak step forward before falling to his knees. Mira rushed forward and caught him before he could fall face first on the floor. He was light to light for a grown man. She helped him inside and shut the door quickly. The cold outside was dangerous at night. "Come on," she whispered, leading him toward the exam bed. "Just sit. I'll help you." The man didn't say a word. He just followed, eyes half closed. His face was partly hidden under a dirty hood. But Mira noticed something strange. His hands. They were clean. Not the kind of hands you see on miners or mechanics. In his posture, even weak, was a pride and calm. She pushed the thoughts aside. Whoever he was, he needed help. Mira grabbed a thermal blanket from the shelf and wrapped it around his shoulders. Then she took her scanner and waved it over him. His heart rate was low, body temperature dropping, signs of exhaustion, hunger, and possibly internal injury. "You're lucky you knocked when you did," she said, pouring a cup of warm synth soup. "Another are out there, and you'd be sleeping forever." The man accepted the cup with both hands. Still, he didn't speak, just a nod of thanks. Mira watched him sip the soup slowly. Every movement he made was careful, like someone used to hiding. She wanted to ask who he was, but she knew what it was like to carry too many questions. So she didn't, not yet. Instead, she treated the small wound on his arm. It looked like a burn deep, but clean. Not the usual type caused by colony tools. It looked advanced, too advanced. "Doesn't hurt?" she asked, wrapping it in a clean bandage. He shook his head. Then, finally, he spoke, voice soft and deep. "Thank you." Mira paused. It was the first time she heard him speak. His tone was polite, almost too polite for someone who looked like he had nothing. "You don't have to thank me. It's my job," she said. He looked up. His eyes were sharp, intelligent. Not everyone still does their job when no one is watching. Mira blinked. The way he said it felt like a test or a compliment. She wasn't sure. She stood up and sighed. "You can rest here tonight, just till morning. Security doesn't patrol this area often, so no one will bother you." The man nodded once more. "You're kind." Mira shook her head. Just tired of seeing people fall and no one catching them. She turned off the bright lights, leaving only the soft blue glow near the med station. The man lay back on the bed, pulling the blanket close. His eyes closed, and within moments, he was asleep. Mira sat back at her desk, watching him for a moment. Something about him didn't fit. He didn't smell like the streets. His voice had weight. And that burn on his arm, what kind of poor traveler gets a burn like that? Still, she had seen many strange things since coming to Mars, and she had learned to trust kindness first, questions later. She looked out the window. The Martian sky above was dark, painted with red dust and stars. Somewhere out there, far above the colony domes, people lived in clean air, with gardens, gravity beds, and glass towers. The rich, the powerful, the untouchables. But down here, it was different. Here, people like her worked double shifts, slept in cold rooms, and tried not to break under the weight of silence. Her eyes drifted back to the sleeping man. "Who are you really?" she whispered, but he didn't answer. He only breathed softly, peaceful at last. Mira leaned back, pulled her coat over her shoulders, and rested her head against the chair. Outside, the red wind blew quietly. Inside, for one cold night, two strangers found shelter under the same roof, and neither of them knew how much that moment would change their lives forever. When Mira returned to the clinic the next morning, the man was already gone. The bed was still warm. The blanket was neatly folded. The empty soup cup had been washed and left beside the sink. There was no name, no note, and no sign he had ever been there except the faint scent of the medicine she used on his wound. She stared at the bed for a while, then slowly shook her head. Just another mystery, she whispered to herself. Red light 7. Had many like that, people who appeared and disappeared, faces without names, voices without stories. Life was hard in the outer zones, and people often moved in the shadows, trying to stay unseen. Mira didn't blame them. She had grown up in those same shadows, but still, something about that man didn't feel like a normal stranger. Later that day, Mira helped set up a temporary med tent near the cargo docks. A mining drill had malfunctioned, and 3 workers were burned badly. She worked quickly, wrapping bandages, calming panic, and injecting pain medicine. Her hands moved without rest, her voice calm, though her back ached and her legs felt weak. When the emergency ended, Mira sat on a crate to catch her breath. The colony sky above was a dull orange, filled with floating dust. A transport shuttle flew overhead, loud and heavy, heading toward the rich zones on the other side of the ridge. As she wiped sweat from her brow, her eyes caught something unusual. Across the street, there, standing behind a half-broken machine wall, was a figure, covered in a dark coat, face mostly hidden, just watching. Her heart skipped. It was him. Before she could wave or say anything, the man turned and walked away into the maze of old cargo units and storage crates. Mira stood up quickly and followed. "Wait," she called, weaving through the metal walkways. "Hey." But by the time she reached the corner, he was gone again. She searched for a minute, but the area was quiet. Only a few miners passed by, too busy to notice her confusion. She walked back to the clinic, thoughts spinning in her head. Why was he watching her? Why didn't he speak? That night, as she reviewed medical files, she remembered something strange about his injury. The burn on his arm. She had seen something like it once before. It was during a training program back on Earth. A guest instructor had shown a rare case, a plasma burst wound, caused by high-level defense tech, the kind only used on protected ships and military stations. But that didn't make sense. How could a man dressed like a wanderer have that kind of injury? And his hand smooth, clean, with nails trimmed perfectly. That wasn't the hand of someone living in the dirt or fixing machines. Then she remembered his words again. Not everyone still does their job when no one is watching. That sounded like someone testing her, studying her. But why? 3 days passed. The clinic got busier. A dust storm hit part of the colony, causing minor damage and sending a few people in with breathing problems. Mira worked extra hours. She slept on the clinic chair sometimes, too tired to go home still. She kept thinking about him. And on the 4th day, he returned. It was just past midnight when she heard the soft knock again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She opened the door, and there he stood, same coat, same quiet eyes. But this time, his hood was down, and Mira got a better look at his face. He was young, but there was something ageless in his expression. His jaw was sharp, his eyes deep gray, calm but alert. He didn't look scared or lost. He looked patient, like he had all the time in the world. "You came back," she said quietly. He gave a small nod. "I didn't mean to worry you." Mira stepped aside to let him in. "You didn't. You just made me curious." He smiled softly. It was the first time she had seen him smile. "I'm not here for treatment," he said, sitting gently on the chair across from her desk. "I just wanted to thank you again and return something." He reached into his coat and placed a small item on the desk. It was a silver med scanner, hers. She gasped. "I thought I lost this. You dropped it when you ran out to help the miners, he said. I saw it, and I kept it safe. She picked it up. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Mira asked, Who are you, really? The man looked at her for a while before answering. Just someone passing through, he said, looking for something real. She raised an eyebrow. Real? Yes, he replied. Not numbers. Not fake smiles. Not systems built to serve the powerful. Just people who care, like you. Mira looked away, unsure what to say. He stood up. You don't need to know my name. Not yet. But I promise, you'll see me again. She opened her mouth to speak. But he had already moved toward the door. Before he left, he turned back. You remind me of someone I lost, someone honest. That's rare. And then he was gone again into the night, like a shadow carried by the wind. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She stared at the scanner in her hand. The silver surface reflected the soft light above. Who was that man? And what was he really looking for? 3 suns had passed since Mira last saw the man in the coat. Red Light 7 was back to its usual rhythm, tired miners, broken machines, and endless dust in the sky. The clinic stayed busy. A new shipment of oxygen tanks had been delayed again, and the backup systems were failing in some housing blocks. People came in coughing, wheezing, and asking for more than Mira had to give. Still, she smiled through it. She always did. But in the back of her mind, the quiet man with gray eyes still lingered. She didn't know why he had come or what he truly wanted. Yet her heart told her something was not ordinary about him. Then, one afternoon, something strange happened. Mira had just finished checking on an injured worker when the screen on the wall blinked to a news alert. Colony announcements were usually boring weather reports, ration warnings, or shuttle delays. But this one made Mira stop in her tracks. Breaking report. Disappearance of Halden Dynamics Air, still no sign of Ray Halden. After ship explosion, her eyes widened. She turned up the volume. The reporter spoke clearly. Ray Halden, only, son of Earth-based Halden Dynamics, vanished during a private space flight 3 weeks ago. Authorities believe the ship was attacked. Parts of the wreck were found drifting near the Jupiter belt. No body has been recovered. Investigation is ongoing, and the company remains silent. Mira stared at the screen. REI. That was the name he had given her. She stood frozen. Could it be the same person? No, it couldn't. The man she met wore an old coat, not a royal suit. He slept on a clinic bed, not in golden rooms. But then, the way he spoke, the way he watched people, and the burn on his arm. That strange, sharp plasma mark. That wasn't something a poor man could get. A thought crept into her mind. What if he didn't disappear? What if he was hiding here? Later that evening, Mira walked through the colony's quiet alleys. The red dust hung low, making it hard to breathe. Without a mask, she covered her face and moved toward the far edge of Red Light 7 near the old freight storage area. She wasn't sure why she came here. Maybe it was a feeling. Maybe it was the way he had vanished before, always slipping into the quiet parts of the colony. She passed by a group of children playing with broken robot parts. They waved. She waved back. As she turned a corner near the silent storage units, her hand froze in the air. He was there, standing near a low wall, watching the horizon. Same coat, same eyes. This time, he saw her. He didn't run. He simply waited. Mira walked toward him slowly. You're Ray Halden, aren't you? He didn't look away. I was. She stood beside him. They think you're dead. I know. She looked at him carefully. Why are you here, dressed like this? Hiding in a place like Red Light 7? Ray turned his eyes to the rusty sky. Because I needed to know the truth. About people. About myself. Mira didn't speak. She waited. Her EI continued, voice calm. When I was a boy, my family lived above clouds, floating cities, artificial suns. I never saw real dirt, never heard a real cry for help. Everything was filtered, even emotions. And now, Mira asked, now I see what life really is. He replied, hard, dusty, beautiful, honest. She looked down. You could go anywhere. Why come here, Ray's gaze returned to her. Because this is where I found something I'd lost, kindness without reason. Mira felt her cheeks warm. She shook her head. I only gave soup and a blanket. That's not special. To someone lost in space, Ray said softly, it's more than gold. They sat on a broken crate, side by side. No sound but the wind and the quiet hum of power lines. Mira finally asked, what happened to your ship? It was sabotaged, Ray said. By someone inside the company. They wanted control. I escaped in a small pod before the blast, landed far off-grid, crawled for days. No one was supposed to find me. But I did, Mira whispered. Yes, he said. You did. She turned toward him, and now, Ray looked up at the stars. Now, I wait, watch, decide who I want to be if I want to go back at all. Mira sighed. You can't stay hidden forever. I know, he said, but I can choose how I return. The next day, strange things began to happen in Red Light 7. Surveillance drones near the clinic stopped working. Power readings changed. Messages on Mira's communicator came in blank. Something was watching her, something silent and careful. And then, late one night, a woman from the central sector came to the clinic. Well-dressed, hair smooth, eyes sharp. She asked for Mira by name. I hear you treated a stranger last week, she said. Mira looked at her, calm. I treat many strangers. This one wore a torn coat, tall, gray eyes, burn on the left arm. Mira kept her face still. I don't remember. The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. If you do remember, tell him someone is looking. Then she walked away, quiet as smoke. Mira stood frozen for a long time. Ray wasn't just missing. Someone was hunting him. She walked to the storage yard again that night, heart heavy. When she found him, he was already waiting. They know, she said. I know, he replied. Will you run? Ray looked into her eyes. Only if you come with me. Mira's breath caught in her throat. This was no longer a simple kindness. This was the beginning of something bigger. Something real. The morning sky over Red Light 7 was darker than usual. The dust storms had thickened overnight, and even the lights on the tall towers seemed dim behind the red clouds. People walked quickly, heads down, coughing through warm masks. Inside the clinic, Mira stood near the window, staring outside. Her mind was heavy with thoughts. Ray hadn't come again. It had been 2 days since she warned him about the strange woman, 2 days since he said those words to her, only if you come with me. She hadn't answered then, and now she didn't know what to think. Mira spent the next few hours treating a line of tired workers. Most had chest pain, dry skin, or dust burns. It was nothing new. This was the life of Red Light 7. Every day, people hurt, and every day, Mira helped, but her hands moved slower than usual. Her thoughts kept returning to her EI. Why had he trusted her? Why would someone like him, rich, important, powerful, risk hiding here? And now that someone was hunting him, would they come for her too? As she wrapped a patient's arm, a deep sound shook the air outside, a low, heavy rumble followed by the echo of engines. Everyone turned toward the windows. A ship was landing. But not just any ship. This one was clean, white, and marked with Holden Dynamics symbols. Mira's heart raced. The whole colony seemed to stop. No one from Holden Dynamics had ever come to Red Light 7 before. Not even once. The company had factories here. Yes, but no visits, no news, and no attention. Now a ship had landed in front of the old landing pad, near the broken loading station. People gathered at a distance, whispering. Then, the ship's door opened, and Ray stepped out. But he didn't look like the man in the worn coat anymore. He stood tall in a clean dark jacket, simple but sharp. His hair was brushed back, his face calm. And behind him stood 2 quiet guards in gray uniforms, not military, but well-trained. The people of Red Light 7 watched in silence. Some stared in confusion, others backed away. Mira's hand shook as she stepped outside the clinic. He saw her, and walked straight to her. You said you might come back, Mira said, voice low. I nodded. And I did. You didn't have to come here like this. I did, he said, eyes steady. I wanted them to know I wasn't hiding anymore. Mira glanced at the crowd. Some were still watching. Others had gone back to their work, pretending not to care. "Is it safe?" she asked Dr. I looked toward the ship. "Not yet, but safer than before." "Why are you really here, Ray?" He took a deep breath. "Because I've made my choice." Later that day, the crowd gathered near the open area where old colony announcements were made. A platform had been set up. Mira stood near the back, unsure why she had even come. Then Ray stepped onto the platform, and the whispers stopped. He spoke slowly, clearly. "I know most of you don't know me, and those who do may not believe I belong here. But I do. I walked these streets with dust in my boots. I slept near your power lines. I watched how hard you work, how little you ask for, and how much you give. You are not forgotten. I am Ray Halden. My ship was attacked. My family name almost taken from me. But I survived, and I saw the truth." He looked at the people. Face calm but strong. "From today forward, this colony will no longer be ignored. Supplies will arrive on time. Clinics will be funded. Workers will have safety. This is a promise not from Halden Dynamics, but from me." There was silence, then, slowly, a few people clapped. And then more. Soon, the open square filled with sound cheers, claps, even some laughter. It wasn't loud, it wasn't wild, but it was real. Mira felt something strange in her chest, pride, hope, and a question. Was this what he meant when he said he wanted to return differently later? As the crowd cleared, Ray stood beside Mira near the clinic. "You surprised them," she said with a small smile. Ray looked at her. "Did I surprise you?" She nodded. "Yes, good," he said softly. "I want you to know something, Mira." She looked up. "I didn't just come back for the colony." Mira didn't speak. "I came back because of you." She shook her head gently. "I'm just a nurse," Ray smiled. "Exactly. And you helped someone without knowing who they were. That's rare. That's real." Mira looked away, her cheeks warm. "I have more work to do," he continued. "Across Mars, across other colonies. But I don't want to do it alone." She turned to him slowly. "I'm not asking you to leave your life behind," Ray said. "I'm asking, would you walk with me? Help build something better for others like us?" Mira didn't answer right away. She looked around, at the dust, at the clinic, at the people she had helped, at the quiet hills beyond the colony walls, then back at him. "I'll think about it," she said. Ray nodded. "That's all I ask." He smiled again, gently, and walked back to the ship. And Mira stood alone, heart full of questions but also full of something else, possibility. The dust storm passed overnight, leaving the streets of Red Light 7 quiet and red once again. But inside Mira's heart, a different kind of storm had begun. She sat alone on the small bench behind the clinic. The early morning sun was just rising above the hills, casting a soft orange glow across the colony. Birds from Earth, now adapted to Mars, chirped quietly near the water tanks. The air was dry, but peaceful. Mira held the silver data ship in her hand, the one Ray had given her days ago. "If your heart ever changes its orbit," he had said, "this chip leads home." She stared at it, unsure what home even meant anymore. 4 years, her world had been this colony, the dusty rooms, the broken machines, the tired people. She had spent every day helping others, trying to make a difference, even if it felt small. She had never dreamed of leaving, never imagined a world beyond Red Light -7. But now, someone had offered her a path to that world, a place where she could help more people, build clinics, save lives on other colonies, work with real supplies, modern tools, safety, comfort, and maybe love. She smiled slightly at the thought. Ray was different, not perfect, but honest in a way she hadn't expected from someone born into a world of power. Still, it wasn't an easy choice. Later that day, Mira walked through the colony streets. People were still talking about Ray's speech. Some were hopeful. Others didn't believe things would change. One of the old miners, a man named Tom, called out to her. "Mira, heard you're friends with the rich boy." She smiled politely. "He's not a boy, Tom." Tom laughed. "Well, he sure walked in here like he owns the stars. He's trying to help." She said softly. Tom's face turned serious. "Just don't forget us. Mira, if you go up there, don't forget what it's like down here. Mira nodded. I won't, she meant it. Back at the clinic, Mira found a new shipment of supplies waiting for her. Medicine she hadn't seen in months. Fresh bandages, clean water packs. It came with a simple note, for your hands, for their healing. Archie smiled. He hadn't tried to impress her with gold or luxury. He gave her what she needed most, a way to help. Still, she didn't reply. Not yet. That night, Mira walked to the edge of the colony. The stars above Mars sparkled like cold diamonds. She looked at the hills beyond, where the desert stretched for miles. Suddenly, a small hoverbike approached. It was sleek and silver. The driver wore a gray jacket and helmet. He stopped in front of her. It was Ray. Hello, he said. Pulling off the helmet, his eyes looked tired but kind. Taking a walk, he asked, thinking. She replied. He waited, letting her speak first. I'm not afraid to leave, Mira finally said. I'm afraid I'll lose who I am. Ray nodded slowly. You won't. I've seen who you are, and the world needs that version of you. I don't want to become cold, rich, distant. Then don't, Ray said. Stay warm, stay kind. Just do it where more people can feel it. She looked into his eyes. There's one more thing, she said. If I come with you, I come as myself. Not as your helper, not as a follower, but as someone who works beside you, equal. Ray smiled. That's exactly what I want. She thought for a moment longer, then opened her hand and showed him the data ship. I've decided, she said. Ray's eyes lit up. Then come with me, just for a little while. See what's out there. If you don't like it, I'll bring you back myself. Mira nodded. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in years, she wanted to find out. The next morning, Mira packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, her old med scanner, and a photo of her mother, who had once told her, the world is big, Mira, but your kindness will always fit in it. As she locked the clinic door, she turned and looked one last time at the building where she had spent so many hours. Then she walked toward the landing pad, where Ray waited beside a small shuttle. No guards this time, no speeches, just him. He held out his hand. She took it, and together, they stepped into the ship. From the sky, Red Light 7 looked small, just a cluster of buildings in a sea of red sand. Mira stared out the window as the shuttle rose higher. I'll come back, she said. Our EI stood beside her. I know. She turned to him. Where are we going first? He smiled. To a colony that lost its only doctor last year. They've been waiting a long time for help. Mira sat down, heart steady. Then let's not keep them waiting. Red Light 7 was quiet again. The skies were heavy, filled with red clouds that moved fast across the Martian horizon. People walked with worry in their eyes. Something strange was happening. A storm was coming, not just wind and dust, but a solar flare, the kind that damaged power systems, blocked communication signals, and left colonies without light, heat, or air for hours. And this one was stronger than anything the colony had seen in years. Inside the clinic, the backup power was already flickering. The air filters hummed unevenly. Lights dimmed, then lit again. Mira wasn't there. She had left weeks ago with our EI. And now, the people were afraid. Tom, the old miner, stood at the colony gate with others, staring at the sky. We can't survive. Another blackout, he said. The hospital's already out of clean oxygen, someone else added. Why doesn't anyone help us? We're just the forgotten corner of Mars. But then, a sound came from above. Not thunder, not wind. Engines, a ship smooth, silver, and unlike any they had seen, appeared from behind the clouds. Coming down fast but steady, people stepped back in fear, unsure what was happening. The ship hovered above the landing pad, its side lights flashing gently. Then, the door opened. And Mira stepped out. She was dressed in a new coat, simple, dark, clean. But her eyes were the same, warm, calm, and full of purpose. Behind her came others, nurses, engineers, helpers. Crates of supplies followed, moved by small auto carts. Tom's eyes went wide. Mira. She walked up to him and smiled. I told you I'd come back. Within 1 hour, the clinic had working lights again. New power cells were placed in the walls. Oxygen tanks were refilled. Clean water was given out for free. Medicine for children, pain relievers for workers, fresh clothes for the old. And Mira moved through it all like she had never left, checking bandages, calming patients. Guiding the helpers. It was as if the storm wasn't there, but above them. The solar flare moved closer. By nightfall, the warning came. Full power loss in red light 7 expected in 20 minutes. Main systems were going down. The sky turned orange-red, then nearly black. But Mira was ready. With Ray's help, she had brought portable solar shields, designed to hold enough energy to run the clinic and nearby shelters. For 2 full days, they set up fast. Some people doubted it would work. Then the lights flickered. Dan stayed on. The colony cheered. Later, as the storm passed overhead, Mira sat inside the clinic's supply room, taking a short break. Ray walked in, carrying 2 hot cups of synth tea. "You did it," he said. She took the cup and smiled. "We did it." Ray sat beside her. "The shields worked better than expected." "They did," she said. "And the people, they helped each other. They didn't panic. They worked as one." Ray nodded. "Sometimes you just need someone to believe in you." Mira looked at him. "I think that's what you've been doing for me this whole time." He smiled gently. "Maybe." She took a deep breath. "When I first met you, I thought you were just lost. And now," he asked. "Now I think maybe we both were." Until we met. The next morning, the sun returned to the sky. The air was dry and still, but safe again. People came out of shelters, blinking at the light. Red light 7 had survived, and more than that, it had grown stronger. Mira stood outside the clinic, watching children run across the dusty road, chasing each other with laughter. Tom walked up beside her. "You changed everything." "Mira," she shook her head. "Not me. All of us, together." He looked at the clean solar shields, the working lights, the smiling faces. "No," he said, "you lit the first spark." Before leaving, Ray made an announcement in the town square. He stood on a simple crate, no guards, no grand display. "I'm not here as the heir of a big company," he said. "I'm here as someone who owes his life to this colony, and to one woman who chose to help a stranger when no one else would." He paused. "From today on, Red Light 7 will be protected, funded, supplied, not by favor but by partnership. Anyone here who wants to train, to grow, to help will have the chance." People clapped. Rei stepped down. And Mira walked with him. That night, as the stars came out once more, Ray and Mira sat on the same bench where she had once held the data ship in silence. He turned to her. "We could stay here longer, if you want." Mira thought for a moment. "I want to go where help is needed," she said. "This colony is strong now. Others are still waiting." He nodded. "Then we go." She smiled. "But I'll always come back. This will always be my place, my beginning." Ray looked at her, eyes filled with quiet joy. "I think," he said, "this is just the beginning for both of us." And above them, the stars shone brighter than ever, clear, strong, and full of light. It had been 3 months since Mira left Red Light 7 with Rei. In that short time, her life had changed more than she ever thought possible. They had visited 3 different colonies, places far worse off than Red Light 7. Some had no doctors at all. Others had broken clinics, no clean water, or children who had never seen medicine that worked each time. Mira helped with steady hands and a calm heart. She trained others, organized supplies, and built trust with people who were used to being ignored. And Ray was there beside her, not as a rich man giving orders, but as a partner. He lifted crates, listened to problems, and made sure no one ever felt small around him. They were not just helping people. They were building something bigger, a future where kindness and care were stronger than money or status. But even with all the work, Mira found herself thinking of Red Light 7 often. It wasn't just her home. It was where everything had started. So when Ray asked, "Do you want to go back?" she smiled and nodded without hesitation. They returned under the soft light of Mars' twin moons. This time, there was no crowd, no emergency, no speeches. Just peace. The people of Red Light 7 welcomed them warmly. Children ran to Mira and hugged her. Old workers waved from their homes, even Tom. The grumpy miner smiled and offered tea. The colony looked different now. The streets were cleaner. The power grid was stronger. The clinic had 3 new rooms into local nurses who Mira had trained before leaving. It felt alive. EI looked around and said, "You did this." Mira shook her head. "We did this." That evening, a small gathering was held outside the clinic. Lanterns hung from metal poles. Simple food was served, and music played softly from an old radio. Mira stood with a cup in her hands, watching children dance near the lights. Her heart felt full. Our EI walked up beside her. "Do you remember the night I first knocked on the clinic door?" he asked. She smiled. "You didn't say much. I was scared," he admitted. "Not of being found, but of being seen." Mira looked at him. "You let yourself be seen. That's what made you strong." They stood in silence for a moment. The stars above were bright, scattered like glowing sand across the black sky. Then Ray said, "I have something for you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small silver case. Inside it was a simple ring made not of gold, but of a soft metal shaped like a tiny star, with a small light blue gem in the center. Mira's breath caught in her throat. "This," Ray said, "is not just a ring. It's a promise." She looked at him, eyes wide. "I don't want to live in glass towers," he said. "I don't want a life where people bow or follow. I want a life beside someone brave. Someone who cares even when no one's watching." He took a gentle breath. "I want a life with you, Mira. Not as a queen, not as a helper, but as my partner, my equal, my heart." Mira didn't speak for a moment. She looked at the ring, then at the colony she had once thought she would never leave. Then she looked at her EI. And smiled. "Yes," she said simply. The celebration continued into the night, filled with music and laughter. People danced, shared stories, and remembered how far they had come. Some told the younger children how Mira once ran the clinic with almost nothing. Others talked about how Ray first arrived in a torn coat, quiet and unknown. But now, things were different. They weren't just a nurse and a stranger anymore. They were a symbol of hope, of change, of what could happen when hearts met at the right time, in the right place. Days passed, and Mira and Ray didn't leave Red Light 7 right away. They spent time with the people, helped build a new learning center, and organized more health training for the nearby outposts. And when the time came to leave again, it wasn't sad. It was full of light, because everyone knew they weren't going far. And more importantly, they'd always return. As their ship lifted gently from the red soil, Mira looked out the window at the colony below. The lights of the clinic still glowed softly. She turned to Ray and took his hand. "So?" she asked with a grin. "Where's the next stop?" Ray smiled. "A colony near the ice mines. They say the cold there freezes even hope." Then I guess it's the perfect place to bring warmth. And together, they flew toward the stars to souls once lost, now united not by fate or wealth, but by the quiet power of compassion. Because in a world of silence, pain, and distance, it was humanity that saved them. And now, they would pass it forward. One heart, one hand, one healing touch at a time. The end.